Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is a snowy day here where we are at Boys Town, but we hope you are having a wonderful afternoon. We are on today for our third Thursday Common Sense Parenting Facebook Live. My name is Gabby, joined here with parenting expert Bridget Barnes. Bridget, how's it going?
I'm staying warm. I'm trying to stay warm.
Yes, I don't know if you can see the snow out my window. Probably not. It's kind of gray.
Yes, I can. A little bit, yes. It did. It surprised me this morning when I saw the snow coming down. And it's times like this when it's snowing, it's colder, we're staying in longer that, things like depression, anxieties, and things can come up. And so I'm glad we're having this topic today.
Yes, so we're talking about a topic that is more on the heavy side and definitely is a issue that presents itself in a lot of families, and that is anxiety and depression. So, Bridget and I were talking right before this. We could break this talk up into so many different parts and really get into the nitty gritty. But for the sake of this live, we do have several discussion questions that we're going to go through. So, if this is a topic that is personal to you or your family and you have a question for Bridget, go ahead and drop it in the comment section of this video. We can answer it. And if you're watching later after this live video concludes and you have a question, go ahead and just message our page and I can help get you an answer or link you to a resource that can help your family. So make sure to like this video and we'll go ahead and get into these questions here. So, Bridget, the first question is, let's just talk about general awareness of anxiety and depression in kids. So, do you have any statistics to share on just how many children nationwide suffer from anxiety and depression or depression?
Yeah, well, when I saw that, I was like, that is a good question. I'm not an expert in statistics on this, but I did pull down some numbers. And what I found was that nearly 5 million children in the US are uh, typically have some type of serious mental illness on board. That was kind of a astounding number.
Yeah.
And that 3.2% of American children and adolescents are diagnosed with depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes this depression that children are experiencing in their young lives can persist into adulthood if it's not treated. Anxiety was the second most common type of disorder, second to depression, that children are experiencing. Now, both anxiety and depression can be very high, especially in older children, such as teenagers. So, somewhere between 12 and 17, we'll see this kind of upticking of depression and anxiety. And I have to say, we've had some talks, haven't we, Gabby, in the past about social media and what part
Yeah.
that plays in our kids. So, yeah, those were the numbers that I pulled down. And basically, what we're saying there is, yeah, we are seeing it in our kids. We're seeing it at some significant percentages, and that untreated can become a problem in their adult lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you just mentioned social media, but what else have you found, whether through your research or through hearing things in our parenting classes? What
Mhm.
are kids these days anxious about or depressed about? Are there similar triggers?
Mm. Yeah, I think, what I hear in the classes, some parents are saying, kids are triggered again by social media. Kids are triggered sometimes during this time of year, feeling left out. I had a
Yeah.
girlfriend call me and tell me she was going to Greece, and I was like, totally like feeling like, oh,
Where's
I
my
wish.
invite? Yeah.
Yes. And so, feeling stressed out sometimes. So things are going to happen in a child's life that's going to make them feel stressed, or they're going to have difficulty coping with certain things. They're going to have loss and maybe experience severe illness, death, violence, abuse, and those things can be triggers for depression and anxiety when that happens in a child's life. And when it does, it really does take parents and family to help that child work through those fears, those anxieties, through that depression, and teach them some some other ways to deal with that, because all of us are going to experience things that can trigger this depression or anxiety. It is what are we going to do with that? You can't say your kids are never going to experience anything. They wouldn't be living, right? But what will they need to do with that? And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward in this conversation.
Mm-hmm. We had a question submitted. Can kids be predisposed to anxiety and depression? Is it genetic?
Mm-hmm. I think, this is a great conversation to have with our docs. So I would really strongly advise that person that asked that question to go up to our parenting.org site, push on Ask the Experts, and definitely give that question to one of our behavioral health psychiatrists or psychologists, and I think they will give you a wealth of information. But I would have to say, in my experience with working with families over the last 3 decades, that I do see that as, moms and dads saying, I have that, my kids have it, or my dad had it, and it's in something that I'm struggling with. So it can be a part of a genetic predisposed issue. But some kids can have parents who have depression or anxiety, and they're not having those issues. They're not experiencing that. So it's not a given. Okay.
Yeah. The next question is, what are some signs of, let's talk about the signs for both. So signs of anxiety and then signs of depression. And maybe is there some crossover symptoms of both of what we should be looking for?
Right. So symptoms of anxiety in children. Well, they might find it hard to concentrate. They're not sleeping. They're waking up out of a sleep with bad dreams. They're not eating properly. They're becoming quickly irritable, or being out of control, or having these outbursts out of nowhere. They're worrying and have lots of negative thoughts, are feeling very tense, or, really just having a difficult time. Even if they're toilet trained, maybe struggling with that, using the restroom. You wouldn't think, but yeah, those things, your body and your mind and your feelings are all connected, right? Mm-hmm. There's actually a nerve that goes down from our brain into our gut. So, when you have that gut feeling, that is a truism, right? But some of those things, can be some of the things that you see in a kid who is experiencing anxiety, right? So, if a kid is experiencing, do you have any questions or any thoughts about that, Gabby, before I go? I don't want to be just jabbering along.
Yeah, you're fine. You want to move on to the depression signs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, kids who are depressed, depression and anxiety can be together. A kid who is having depression, feeling sadness, feeling hopelessness, having that reduced energy, sleeping a lot, just not being engaged, isolating themselves, all of those things can be signs of depression. Whereas anxiety, the difference is that these kids are feeling more nervous, more worried, more dread, right? So these two conditions can be seen together. You could have that comorbidity where, a kid who's depressed can also show signs of anxiety, right? And vice versa. It's more likely, according to this one study I did look at, that a kid who is depressed is more likely to have anxiety. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, that's the difference. One is more anxious, more nervous, more worried, more dreadful. The other one is more sad, more hopeless, reduced energy. So that's how you kind of can tell. But here's the thing. Here's the caveat. Every kid is what? Different. And some kid might show no signs whatsoever, right? But if it, so you can't just go by what I'm telling you. You have to look at every kid and kind of really listen to your kid. If your child tells you, Gabby, that they're depressed, if they use those words with you, but you are not seeing any of those signs, you should still respond to their statement, right?
Yeah.
because every kid is different and are going to just demonstrate those feelings differently.
Hmm. What about those kids, who don't show signs? We hear stories of, kids who commit suicide or whatever
Mhm.
it may be and say, oh, their parents, I had no idea that they were feeling that way, or I didn't know anything
Mhm.
was wrong. What
Mhm.
about those situations?
Yeah, those are scary situations where there are no signs, and I've had experience with that. And that person really seemed themselves. They
Right.
seemed happy almost,
Yeah.
and then um, committed suicide a few days later. And it was like they were at that point of checklist, like relieved almost, and they were right. So you wouldn't have known, right?
Right.
So it's really a bigger view than a couple of little things. It's just ongoing. It doesn't happen overnight usually. It is a lot of things and a lot. And so if you're really connected with that person, if you're really listening, if you're taking the time, then you're going to see some things that go, huh? And don't overlook them. Like, what did you just say? Or what are you doing? Or why is this chronically going on for so long? And not letting it go on and not being afraid to reach out and ask for help. Reaching out and asking for help from a specialist, from a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a behavioral specialist or whoever doesn't mean your kid is crazy or that you're not a good parent. It just means that you love your kid enough to reach out and get some help.
Yeah.
And so wherever you're seeing that, because there might be that day where you don't see it, it looks really normal
Hmm.
and it isn't, but you wouldn't know it to look at that.
Yeah.
It's a big picture kind of a thing, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Mhm.
How do the signs of depression and anxiety in children vary in age? I know you kind of mentioned, from potty training all the way to being a teenager, they're pretty
Mhm.
different.
Yeah, I think those symptoms that I described about concentration and sleeping and waking up, you know, with bad dreams and not eating properly, that's not particular, that any age can have those issues. And knowing your kid at whatever they age they're at is really what you're kind of looking at. But with some children, like my one relative, young child, someone had died, Gabby, and the child was exhibiting anger.
Mhm.
It was depression, but it came out looking very angry. Now how that would look in an adult, depression, how that looks in an adult can look very different. And so when you're at a funeral and this kid is doing these behaviors or acting really snappy or saying things or running around or laughing, and people are like, what is that? And that could be depression in a child. So kind of, parents are not the experts, that we don't know everything. We just love our kids, right? And so when you're, going through anything that you're struggling with, guess what? Your kid's probably struggling with that too. Even if they're smiling at you, even if they're telling you everything is great, you should give them the opportunity to speak to someone else. And in a little bit, we'll talk about some of the strategies and some things that you can do that you can do very easily to getting help from a therapist. But I think that it's important for you not to think that children are okay just because they tell you they are, if they've experienced something that could trigger those emotions, because it might come delayed. They might not respond right away. And then they're like, this person's no longer here. And they finally get it. They're not going to come back. I remember my son telling me, she's not coming back. And I'm like, no, she's not coming back. But that took some time for him to get to that place, right?
Mhm. Yeah. We just have a few more questions here for Bridget. So if you're watching live and you have a question for her, now would be the time to comment it. And we also are leaving several different resources in our comment section, as well as our parenting question box that Bridget mentioned. So if you have a question you want to submit to one of our experts, that link is in the comment section. The next one says, we kind of already talked about the differences between anxiety and
Mm.
depression, so I'm going to skip that question. But the next one is, how do I seek help for my child? Should I start with their pediatrician, or what's the good avenue to do?
Mhm. Well, I definitely would start. You can start with your ped and ask them uh, about who in the community that they would refer you to. So it's nice to get a referral. Um, and for them to kind of assess the child is so to make sure it's not a biological thing going on here. That's why he's not going to the potty. That's why he's not sleeping. There's some sinus issue here, not that he's depressed. So you want to tick off the boxes of any biological issues that your child might be facing that make them look depressed, but they're just really lethargic because there's some other medical issue on board. But if you want to, you should definitely seek help maybe with a behavioral specialist, and you can find these folks in your school who can kind of assess what's going on. Have you seen him bouncing around? Are you seeing depressed? And I remember the behavioral specialist calling me and saying, okay, he's crying and for no particular reason. And that was really our first step into getting therapeutic help, right? And so I think that when you are just open to hearing different specialists and people that are out there in the community, and being open to therapeutic support, it might need a lot, you might need a little, just depends on your kiddo, right? And then they can lead you toward working on different strategies that can help your kid. But the first thing they might do is just really sit down and talk to your kid and really listen to them, and talk to you as well to really hear what you're experiencing with your child. And just having that just makes all the difference. And then if they hear you saying things, or some of the things that usually come up in those kind of interviews is like, our strategies that you develop not working. Nothing's working with this kid. I tried everything. He won't stop crying. I tried everything. This behavior can persist. If it's interfering with school or his social life, or if it's not developmentally appropriate. So some of those are the big key things that people will ask when you're in an interview, and we'll work with your kid to see where they are in the process. But reach out to your doc, your pediatrician first, and then get a referral to a therapist or behavior specialist. Definitely Boys Town has a wonderful behavioral health clinic, just chock full of experts and wonderful people that are there to assist.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about a couple of strategies that I've worked with some parents that are going through our classes. And these are just little things that you can use. Of course, folks, get with a trained therapist when you're working with depressed kids or children who are going through severe anxiety. Don't just try to wing that on your own, right? But, some grounding techniques or strategies that help connect a kid with the present moment might help with anxiety. So we're getting anxious about something that's going to happen. We're going to go to the school play, and I am supposed to be the tree. I'm anxious, or whatever the kid might be, So it helps by helping kids get mindful about the moment that they're in. And you can do something as simple as what is called the 5-5-5 method, and it's all about breathing. So you breathe and you hold your breath for 5 seconds, and you breathe out for 5 seconds, right? You breathe in. So it's really just getting the kid to take a breath and to be in the moment that they're in, because sometimes they're anxious about moments that haven't even happened. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot of more sedentary kids, again, that social media. So getting kids to exercise. Exercise is so very important for our mental health. I cannot stress that enough. I know myself. How about you, Gabby? Yeah. When I'm not exercising, I'm not as nice as what I am. So
yeah. My Peloton bike is kind of my therapy some days. So I'm with you.
I tell you, I get on my walker or I do
Yeah.
my exercises, lifting weight, whatever makes you takes you to a happy place, or releases some of that stress that we build up in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits. Let that out in exercise. It's good. It's there for a reason. As humans, we need it for relaxation, and it also, studies have shown, it reduces anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
So when you think about meds or therapy, think about exercising too, people. Um, another popular technique that families can use is the 5 4 3 2 1 method. So you just tell your kid, okay, think of 5 things you can see. And so they're about to go into going to take some test or something that is, causing them anxiety, and they can, think of 5 things they can see, and then 4 things they can feel, 3 things that they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and then the last but not the least, 1 thing they can taste. And so when they're focusing on that, they're not focusing on the thing that's making them anxious, that's happening right now. I'm going to have to go into this interview. I'm going to have to take this test. I'm going to have to deal with the situation. So just thinking of little techniques. And again, the Boys Town Behavioral Health Clinic, great place to go. Parenting.org has chock full of different strategies, and ask the expert. I would strongly suggest that. But yeah, those are just a little bitty few things that people sometimes forget that we can do for ourselves on a daily basis to help us with feeling depressed or feeling anxious.
Mhm. Those are great. Thanks for sharing those.
Mhm.
And then lastly, I wanted to ask what other resources does Boys Town offer to help kids with anxiety and depression?
Mhm. Well, what was it? Was it a month ago? Was it you? I do so many of these talks. I hate to say that. I did a talk with the Boys Town Press,
Yeah.
and they have some great books in their catalog now that I am telling every parent, I'm telling everybody that I know. The Butterflies in Me, I think, has a workbook that kids can work out their feelings and their emotions and things like that, and stressful things that are going on with them. There's lots of books out there just to expose children to, so they don't feel like they're the only ones, because sometimes that's what kids say to us. I'm the only one. There's something wrong with me. Nobody else feels this way. And then when they can read, no, there's other people that feel like you too. Are your life, your voice. Kids, teenagers can go up there and find out they're not alone, and other kids are feeling depression, feeling anxious, and talk to other kids and talk to experts and get downloadables that they can use to help them with their feelings and their emotions. Because you can't be there every minute of the day with your kid, and to have something that really has worked with thousands of kids across the country would I would really strongly suggest you reach out and look into that. As I said, Ask the Experts is great on parenting.org. Our behavioral health center, our hotline, there for you 24/7, of course. And of course, Common Sense Parenting. So if you come to a class, whether you come to our online class, guys, or you come to an in-person class, here we have them in Nebraska, but there's Common Sense Parenting all across the nation. What you're going to find there are parents saying the same thing you're saying. I've got this really anxious kid and he's doing X, Y, and Z. Or I've got this child who's depressed. Oh, I've got this therapist I'm working with. And it's a great gateway to talk to other parents and to get some resources that you might not have considered.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I have that linked here in the comment section. It's the bit.ly that says CSP Find a Class. So you can click on that and search your zip code and sign up. And then I also linked here to the Boys Town National Hotline. This is a resource that we share year round. It's great right now. It's great all the time. So that is a free crisis line that kids can call 800-448-3000. 24/7 they can call, or if they would prefer to text, they can text voice to 20121. And then we also have the Your Life Your Voice website linked, where you can sit down with your kid or have them comb through it on their own, and there's dozens and dozens of resources related to anxiety and depression, as well as friendships, dating, relationships, all of it. So we hope you'll check that out. Even if you just take 5 minutes to hop on that website, you might find something that is really beneficial. So,
Right.
Bridget, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I know anxiety and depression, like I mentioned at the beginning, is a very hefty topic, but we appreciate you shedding light and spreading your knowledge on it.
I just want to say in closing that I had a mom come to our class, Gabby, and she came because her child was experiencing depression
Mhm.
and she wanted some tips on that. And come to find, as she went through the class, that she found that she had some
Oh,
issues, right? And, sometimes we go for our kids and then we find there's things that are going on with us that are really weighing on us. And then we were able to get her the help that she needed. And later on, she sent me an email and said that they were doing much better now and that both of them were in therapy and it's just changed their home life. It's changed their lives. And you might just think a little parenting class or going online or asking the expert might not be anything. But if it can change your life, if it can help your kid, if it can give you some peace, do it. Do it today.
yes. Well said. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This is our last Common Sense Parenting Chat of 2022. So I guess I can pull that line that says we'll see you next year because we will. So thank you so much. And if you have any ideas of topics that you want us to talk about next year, go ahead and send us a message and we can get those scheduled. So thank you so much and happy holidays.
Bye, guys.